Okay, so in this particular video, we'll go over the simple rules that we use to assign oxidation states and numbers. Okay, so there are a five set of rules that you should keep in mind. Okay, number one is that एक तो ना before we go over these rules, you need to know the charges on some ions. ठीक है, कुछ ions हैं, ठीक है, उनके ऊपर you need to know their charges. ठीक है, you just need to memorize their charges. ठीक है, so there are some simple ions that you need to know उनके charges आप लोगों को याद होने चाहिए. So two types के ions होते हैं, as you know there are cations which are positive ions, ठीक है, and they're basically lost electrons, so that's why they gain a positive charge. And cations जो होते हैं ना, उसमें हमारे पास जो एक example है ना, one of the most relevant example is ammonium ion. Ammonium ion has a positive charge. ठीक है, ammonium should not be confused with ammonia. ठीक है, ammonia is a stable compound and it's a gas. ठीक है, ammonium ion is not stable and it's not a gas. ठीक है, it's an aqueous ion. The anions, on the other hand, are negatively charged ions, and इसमें the ones that you should absolutely remember are hydroxide, nitrate, sulfate, uh, hydrogen carbonate. It's not really called hydrogen carbonate, it's known as bicarbonate. ठीक है, bicarbonates is the other happening. You should also know about carbonate and phosphate. Okay, so you should just know कि इनके ऊपर charge क्या होता है, ठीक है, because they're not really given in the periodic table, so you have to learn them by heart, right? For example, carbonate के ऊपर 2 negative charge है, right? Phosphate के ऊपर there's 3 negative charge. Okay, so ये चीज है. अच्छा, अब let's go over those simple rules which we use to assign the oxidation states to different elements. ठीक है, so there are a set of 5 rules. The first rule says that on simple ions, the oxidation state is the charge on the ion. Okay. So, for example, let's take copper. Okay, copper 2 plus. Okay. Copper belongs to the transition elements, right? And I told you in the lecture on transition elements that I must have mentioned that transition elements have a variable oxidation state. Okay, their oxidation state is variable, right? They have multiple oxidation states. It depends on the compound they are part of. So, for example, copper can exist as Cu2 plus, right? But in an oxide of copper, okay, it can also exist as Cu plus. Okay, in this copper oxide, copper 2 oxide, sorry, copper 1 oxide, the oxidation state of copper is plus, right? But let's take a compound, for example, like copper sulfate. Okay, copper sulfate is a bright blue liquid. And right here in this compound, the oxidation state of copper is +2, right? So on simple ions, the charge the uh, on the ion is equal to the oxidation state. Okay, that's the first rule that you should remember. Same goes for chloride. All good seven elements, they are negatively charged. Okay, they have a -1 charge when they form simple ionic compounds. In aluminium oxide, the charge on aluminium is +3 and on oxygen it is +2. Sorry, -2. Okay, so in the second rule, you need to know these rules. ठीक है, वरना you won't be able to solve the questions. इसी वजह से I think कल वाले questions भी you guys weren't able to solve. So that's the first rule. Second rule is that in elements, the oxidation state is always 0. Okay, I mentioned this earlier yesterday that in the free form, all elements will have an oxidation state of 0. Okay, when they exist in the free form, their oxidation state will be 0. Okay, they'll neither have an excess of electrons or deficiency of electrons. The total of all oxidation states must equal the overall charge on the species, right? So, for example, if you have, let's say you have sodium chloride, right? Now, if you take sodium chloride, what is the overall charge on this compound? What is the overall charge on this ionic compound, roughly? सोडियम क्लोराइड के ऊपर क्या चार्ज होता
सोडियम पे न्यूट्रल।
है? नहीं नहीं, फुल आयन पे क्या चार्ज है? सोडियम और क्लोराइड के अलग अलग नहीं, फुल पे क्या चार्ज है?
जीरो है ना, क्योंकि
जीरो.
एक एक और।
यस यस, गुड. वेरी गुड, जीरो है, ठीक है। सो लेकिन यहाँ पर जो रूल है, इट स्टेट्स दैट द सम ऑफ ऑक्सीडेशन स्टेट्स मस्ट इक्वल द ओवरऑल चार्ज, राइट। सो इफ यू सम ऑफ दीज ऑक्सीडेशन स्टेट्स, लेट्स से हमें पता है कि बिकॉज when you dissolve sodium chloride in water, so it dissociates into Na plus and Cl minus, right? So Na plus and Cl minus are simple ions. So we have an oxidation state of +1, and then we add the oxidation state of chlorine, that is -1, and it should equal to 0, right? So +1 -1, and that equals to 0. So that confirms this rule. Let's go another example. Let's take another example. Yeah, so you can use this rule to calculate the oxidation states of which are unknown. Okay, so for example, let's take another ion. Let's take an ion from here. Take यहाँ से एक ion लेते हैं. Yeah, so let's take this ion. For example, let's take nitrate. Okay. So now nitrate. What is the overall charge in nitrate? Aslan, what is the overall charge in nitrate?
-3.
Nitrate ion is सामने दिया हुआ charge इसका -1 है. Okay, the overall charge in nitrate ion is -1. So according to that rule stated that if you have an ion, the sum of oxidation states of the atoms which form that ion should equal to the overall charge, right? So what if you were asked to calculate the oxidation state of nitrogen in this compound, in this ion? So you know that if you assume the oxidation state of nitrogen as X, and the you know that the charge on oxygen is -2, right? So X, and you add, so let's just add up the oxidation states, right? So X plus, and we have three atoms, so 3 times -2, and that should all equal to -1, right? So X, and that gives us 3 into 2 is -6, so that gives X -6 equals -1. Okay. And if we just solve this equation for X, so -1, and यहाँ जाके it will be +6. सही है, sorry, ये minus है, because this is minus. So 6 minus 1, that gives you +5, right? This is the oxidation state of nitrogen in the nitrate ion. Okay. Now you see, even though nitrogen किस group से belong करता है? Which group does nitrogen belong to? Group 5, right? So group 5 में, if if you know if the elements form a simple ionic compound, they get a charge of -3, right? But that's where the catch is. The oxidation state is not equal to the charge. Okay, if you have a simple ion, then it's equal to the charge, but oxidation state is not necessarily equal to the charge. Okay, so you can see कि यहाँ पर जो valency है of group 5 elements is -3, right? So if they form an ionic compound, they will gain 3 electrons, right? But in nitrate ion, and nitrogen is part of group 5, right? But in the nitrate ion, you can see that the charge, the oxidation state of nitrogen is +5. Okay, so oxidation state is not necessarily equal to charge. Don't confuse it with the charge, right? So hope that clears it.